After our time up in northern Colombia, we saved a 15-hour bus ride by flying to the beautiful city of Medellin, in which we stayed with some friends. The dad of the family is president of Codiscos, which by any metric is one of the top 3 recording brands in all of Colombia. Very influential in Latin America as well. A worker at the Codiscos gave us a fantastic tour, including showing us this actual vinyl record maker, one of only 2 or 3 in all of Latin America. We got to go into the recording studios themselves, of which there are 3. They weren't active that day, so we kind of got to play around with the equipment a little bit and check out the massive wall-sized screen that you can see on the left here. And they had a lot of musical equipment hanging around for all the musicians that come and do music here. It was a neat experience, and one that not a lot of tourists get when they come to Medellin, that's for sure. Here is the storehouse of all the music they've ever recorded in the 70-year history of Codiscos. We also spent quite a bit of time in their gorgeous apartment in a nice leafy part of Medellin. On the left is Claudia, who cooked and cleaned for us, and on the right is Anna, the mother of the family. They have 3 kids. Here are 2. They're in their 20s and they're going to university. Maria Jose on the left and Daniela on the right. And they kind of kicked it old school, went to a store and bought all the junk food that they grew up on. And then we did a fantastic taste test, which our 2 kids obviously enjoyed quite a bit. There are definitely some new favorites in there.
Our friends recommended that we visit this neighborhood called Comuna 13, which is famous for having been trapped in the middle of violence in the 1980s and 90s between several groups, including military, guerrilla fighters, political groups, and government. And they've turned it into a story of resiliency.
This is the biggest mural in Comuna 13. It's in Medellin, and they redo it every 11 years, we think. This is in the neighborhood that was war-torn for a long time, while the left and the right were fighting, and the people who lived here were stuck in the middle. And they've changed their neighborhood to be one of resiliency, colors for hope, change, vibrancy, music, dance, food, and art.
had a guide take us through the neighborhood. This was an apartment that someone had transformed into a type of museum that told us about the war. And another apartment was transformed into an art gallery with paintings such as this. In 2002, there were 2 military offensives with helicopters, tanks, and automatic weapons as they tried to oust the guerrilla groups, but it is criticized for having targeted civilians. In 2013, the government built these escalators, which made it much easier for the people who live there to make the 28-story commute in and out of town in only 6 minutes. And it's become a tourist attraction now, though it is used for daily commutes. They also made a cable car because the structure of the homes was so dense that there was no way to make roads. So they built this up above the city.
So here we are at another gondola. This time, instead of being in the middle of the Andes Mountains, we're overlooking Medellin city. And this gondola was made not for tourists, but actually as a mode of public transportation to help the poorer people in the neighborhoods coming up the hill here. It was pretty much impossible to build proper roads at that time with the way that the construction was. So the government got together some money and built this for them to get into town, to get to the buses.
After a couple days in Medellin, we drove with our friends to their friend's farm/villa, where we had a lovely time playing basketball in the pool. After that, we drove to a town called Jardín, where we stayed the night and went to see this Cock of the Rock lek, where all of the males come and dance. And other birds at the feeders, like this mott, were also very common there. They were very cool.
Another big highlight was going on this coffee tour with our friends and meeting Leo, who's been working there. I think he's the 3rd generation working on this farm, and he taught us a lot about coffee.
Y ocupamos el segundo o el tercer lugar a nivel mundial de producir el mejor café del mundo.
Yeah.
Y también producimos otros granos de mala calidad, que son unos granos que se sacan antes de tiempo, que son estos, que se secan en el árbol, o granos que se caen verdes.
Okay.
Y para controlar plagas y enfermedades, eso se recoge.
Sí.
Y cuando se secan, esos granos por dentro son así.
Okay.
Granos negros, granos de mala calidad. Y este es el café que se toman los colombianos
Ay, no me digas eso.
en mercado nacional, en La Bastilla,
Ajá.
o el café,
Ajá.
Nescafé,
Claro.
Águila Roja,
Águila Roja.
Sello Rojo.
O sea, eso es el que nos hemos tomado toda la vida, pero ahorita hay otras
La
cosas.
Federación Nacional de Cafeteros ha sido tan criticada porque, siendo de los mejores
Ajá.
productores del café del mundo, tomamos café importado.
Pero Wilson, eso ha cambiado porque
Sí, ahora,
hoy en día sí.
ahora a través de estas
Claro,
charlas.
claro.
Pero imagínense que
Ok.
nosotros
Ya, ya.
producimos
Bueno,
del
bueno,
mejor
ya.
café,
Es very nice.
que el mejor café es este,
Ya, ya.
es este. Mira la diferencia.
Mira, total.
Mira, es este,
Ajá.
comparado con este.
Okay, so
He was great. Here's a photo of a whole bunch of different kind of stages of the coffee bean, from totally ripe, the red ones, to dried out and washed, the white ones. Here's his niece and his brother heading out for just another day on the farm, gathering coffee, as it's a family-run operation. Of course, we got to wear the tourist outfits. Here's Juan this is just our family. And we got to go and pick coffee, which we quite enjoyed, actually. It reminded us of our berry harvesting back home in our garden. And as a good husband, I'm forced to say that Emily did pick more coffee beans than I did in the same amount of time. And here they are in all their glory. And we were quite surprised actually at how bright the little beans were. But of course, inside is what you want. And this little crushing machine, which Juan is operating right here, it crushes the beans and gets the little coffee seeds out. It was beautiful countryside, and he was saying everywhere you look is just coffee farms. Once they've got the beans out, then they have to dry them for a number of days, and they use the sun to do that up on their roof. Yeah.
After drying and crushing and blowing off the husks, next is the cooking process.
Here's the roasting process. You got a little fire going there.
And here they are, roasted and ready to be ground for coffee.
So this is the bean that's been fermented and washed and dried. Inside the bean is the coffee. And then it's green to start. And then you roast that. And that's your coffee. We're about to have our freshly ground coffee. In a pretty beautiful setting here in the outskirts of Jardín in central Colombia.
When we were in Jardín, we went on this amazing coffee tour. The guide was great, and he let us pick coffee and all that stuff. We went through the whole process of the coffee, and it was super fun. We also got some fresh coffee afterwards. It was really good.
And this capped off just a fabulous few days with Andres, Anna, and Juan. Thank you guys so much for the hospitality. We miss you already.
We had a very long, bumpy bus to Manizales, and then me and Grayson were sick the whole time we were there, so we just laid around.
And then we tried to come here to Manizales, which is actually a big city, over that ridge and down the other side, to see a soccer game. But the bus took so long because the road was so rough, and then in the end the soccer game was the day before. So I guess that's that. So we ended up coming here, where we are happily ensconced with our reading and our Duolingo in these hammocks. Julianne's starting to feel better. Grayson is still feverish and not feeling well. But we have nothing to do but hang out here and watch birds. Jeff's seen 58 species just today, and so he's very happy. And we're just having some rest and recovery time in this lovely spot.
We also saw a huge spider on the side of the road when we were coming back from town one day. It was about the size of my hand.
We did get into town in Manizales and saw this sign, which was confusing to us as Canadians, a memento to the colonizers. It seemed like a strange thing to have. And another travel day. And when you're traveling, you just eat the food that you can find. Julianne had some soup and thought something weird was in the bottom, and when she found this, she didn't want to eat anymore. But it was really tasty. Starting in Cartagena, where we first landed in Colombia, one thing that really stood out to us was the Afro-Colombian population. So we looked into it, and it turns out that, as we said before, Cartagena was one of the 3 main ports for the slave trade. And I just wondered, why are the Africans always the slaves? Well, it turns out that when the Spanish came to South America, they tried to enslave the indigenous populations, but because of disease and things like that, they kept dying. And so they went to Africa to get slaves from there, because those people had already been exposed to diseases and things, and so they didn't die as easily as the indigenous populations. So here's a map that shows where the African people went around the world to become slaves. Colombia apparently is currently still 3rd in terms of population of African descent after Brazil and the United States.
Did you know black women once used their hair to draw escape maps in Colombia? In the 1800s, enslaved African women forcibly taken to Colombia would communicate with their communities through braided hair, most importantly for planning escapes. For example, a braided hairstyle called departes, meaning depart in English, would signal that the person wanted to escape. Black women would also record with their braids the obstacles they would encounter on their journeys to help others escape. A river was represented with a braid in the shape of a worm. A bantu knot represented a mountain. And if there were soldiers in any part of the route, they would use really thick braids still known today in the Pacific region of Colombia as tropas, which means troops in English. On top of that, inside the braids, sometimes gold or seeds were hidden to ensure they would survive after they escaped. Because of these escape maps of braids, many Africans were able to escape and form the famous free settlements known as palenques. Some of you may have heard of San Basilio de Palenque, which is one of the first free black towns in the Americas. It's also one of the only remaining palenques in Colombia. It can still be visited if you're in the Cartagena region. Today, this rich history of braids is celebrated every year on May 21st at the Afro hairdressing competitions in Cali, Colombia. May 21st is Afro-Colombian Day, but it also marks the abolition of slavery in Colombia in 1851.
We saw some girls while we were in Colombia with these braided hairdos. We went down to San Cipriano, which you see here on the map, and this is another one of those towns where slaves escaped to try to gain their freedom. They hid in the jungle, and the Spanish couldn't get to them. They used these old train tracks and converted them using motorcycles and pieces of wood to build these little brujitas. And even today, the town of San Cipriano is only accessible by these brujitas, so we got to ride on them. It was so cool.
So these little,
Burritos?
yeah, burritos. It was a train track that is no longer being used, and so
Correct.
people made these little carts
As far
with
as I understand,
motorcycles.
that's how it happened, yeah.
So cool. So ingenious. It's awesome.
At this point in our long travel day, of course, it had started to rain. So when we crossed the river in an open boat, we got absolutely soaked. And this picture of my happy parents here obviously does not reflect how the majority of us were feeling at the time. But we stayed at this amazing place called Mama Yea's, where there was lots of nature, and we went birding a couple times, and the food was absolutely amazing.
These are the grounds at Mama Yaya Races in San Cipriano in Colombia, which is fairly close to the coast and in the lowlands. They have these ponds, I guess, just to manage the water. It seems to be sunny in the mornings, or warm at least, and then rains and thunders at night. Last night the rain started at 8:30. We went to our cabin and it didn't stop until 6 o'clock this morning. And sometimes it was so loud, it was actually shaking the bed. Jeff and I got no sleep. The children, of course, slept right through. And this land is amazing how it can absorb or deal with all this water. Like, I don't even know how these houses are still standing. And here we are.
This is what a birder looks like in his natural habitat.
Where are we going, Jeff?
Upriver.
Oh, what for?
Upstream.
What are we going to do up there?
I have no idea. It was pretty fun.
But eventually we'll get to a river.
Yes.
And we're going to tube down it, right?
I suppose.
Good thing we have a guide. We wouldn't find the path as we have to slosh through the river every now and then stop to play in waterfalls along the way. This feels like one of those Lost in the Jungle movies, which I guess we are. I cannot believe this place. It's like heaven. It's so fun. We're just walking up this series of small pools and waterfalls near San Cipriano, Colombia. October 31st, Halloween.
And here I am in my natural habitat. It's so much fun playing in all this water.
Again, here's Emily's new trick. Now you see her. And now you don't. Oh, there she is. This little creek is full of little surprises.
After hiking up and down this river and playing in the waterfalls and the pools, then we got to ride down the river on inner tubes, and thank goodness Victor was there to save us a few times. It rained a lot while we were there at Mama Yaya's, and the rainy time was a good time to do some schoolwork together.
At Mama Yaya's, she gave us a cooking lesson. The kitchen was outside, and it was quite dark at that time, so we didn't get to see much outside. She gave us these super cute outfits that we put on, but it was quite hot in the kitchen, especially when you're cooking over the stove, which is what I was doing. I was making some sort of shrimp something. It was absolutely delicious. We also cut up a whole bunch of fruit and vegetables, and we made juice with one of the fruits that we definitely don't have in Canada, but it was really good. Grayson made the salad, and Dad made the plantain chips. He grated plantain, which is kind of like a harder version of a banana, and then smushed them into little patties. Everything was delicious.
In the short time that we had in central Colombia, we felt like we learned quite a lot of their culture, and we definitely ate a lot of delicious food.